I never thought betrayal could have a sound. But to this day, when I close my eyes, I still hear it. The squeak of polished hospital shoes against linoleum, the faint hum of a monitor, and the muffled gasp that slipped out of my throat when I saw them. My husband, the man who promised to hold my hand through surgery, leaning into my sister, their lips pressed together as if I didn't exist. That image became the shadow trailing me for years. But here I am now, 34 years old, standing barefoot in front of a floor-to-ceiling window of my downtown apartment, the city glittering like 1,000 secrets beneath me. Success has a way of dressing itself up in silence. To most people, I'm composed, thriving, maybe even enviable. But no one knows what it cost me to stand this tall. This morning, as I smooth the sleeve of my silk blouse and sip coffee that's gone lukewarm, my phone buzzes. The name flashing across the screen twists something sharp in my chest.
Claire.
My sister. The same sister whose hair smelled of lavender shampoo when she betrayed me. I don't answer. Not yet. Instead, I set the phone down and let the memory wash over me again, not to torture myself, but because some wounds demand to be remembered before they can finally be closed. Hospitals have a way of stripping you bare. Not just your body, but your dignity, too. I remember lying in that thin paper gown, the kind that barely tied at the back, my hands cold and clammy under the fluorescent lights. The smell of disinfectant clung to the air, sharp enough to sting my nose, and I kept repeating his words in my head like a prayer. "I'll be right here, Emily." Through every second. "You're not alone." At 26, I wanted to believe him. Jason had this steady confidence that used to make me feel safe, as if I could fall apart and he'd gather the pieces. That morning, as nurses moved briskly around me, attaching wires and checking vitals, I clung to that promise. He'd be outside, waiting, ready to squeeze my hand when I woke. But when the anesthesia haze wore off and my eyes fluttered open, the world felt tilted. My throat was dry, my head heavy, and through the small gap in the curtain, I saw them. Jason's tall frame leaning toward my sister.
Claire.
Her glossy hair falling forward, his hand on her cheek as their lips touched, slow, deliberate, as if they weren't in a hospital hallway but in some private corner of their world. I thought the heart monitor beside me was broken because surely no heartbeat could survive shattering like that. A sickness pooled in my stomach, heavier than the anesthesia ever was. Betrayal has a taste, I learned. It's metallic, like blood at the back of your throat. My voice caught when I tried to call out. Instead, I bit my lip so hard, I tasted iron. I wanted to scream, to tear down the curtain, to demand answers, but the four tethered me, and my body was too weak. All I could do was watch as my husband and my sister, my own sister, stole the very thing he promised me: loyalty. When Jason finally walked in, pretending nothing had happened, holding a plastic cup of water for me, I turned my face away. Something inside me had snapped clean through. That night, as the pain meds wore off and Claire hovered by the doorway with false concern, I made my decision. I wouldn't fight for either of them. I wouldn't beg, I wouldn't plead. If they could do this when I was most vulnerable, they had already chosen who they were. So I chose, too. I chose to walk away, even if I had no idea where my steps would take me. Hospital with stitches in my body and scars blooming inside my chest, and when the automatic doors hissed shut behind me, I knew there was no going back. Not to Jason, not to Claire, not even to the version of myself who still believed in them. I moved into a one-bedroom apartment that smelled faintly of mildew and old carpet cleaner. The rent ate most of my savings, but at least it was mine. Some nights, I lay awake on the lumpy mattress, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd made the biggest mistake of my life by choosing solitude over the comfort of familiarity. Other nights, I cried until my face ached. But even then, I promised myself one thing: I would not be defined by betrayal. The world, of course, didn't make it easy. Bills piled up like angry voices. Job applications disappeared into online portals with no response. My checking account balance dwindled so low that I learned how to make entire meals from rice and canned beans. There were mornings I thought about calling Claire, even Jason, begging for help, but pride kept my fingers frozen. It was during one of those desperate mornings, scrolling endlessly through job listings, that I stumbled upon a posting for an entry-level marketing assistant at a mid-sized firm downtown. I didn't meet half the listed qualifications, but something in me said, try anyway.
So I did.
And when I walked into the interview, still wearing my only blazer, frayed at the sleeves, I met her. Linda Whitaker, Senior Marketing Director. Sharp as glass, yet warm in a way that cut through my fear. She asked me about my background, and when I admitted I had no formal training, only determination, she smiled in a way I'll never forget. Sometimes, she said, hunger matters more than polish. She hired me on the spot. The first months were brutal. I stayed late most nights, poring over spreadsheets I barely understood, teaching myself social media analytics from free tutorials, and scribbling notes until my fingers cramped. I made mistakes, plenty, but Linda never humiliated me. Instead, she'd slide a cup of black coffee onto my desk and say, "Do it again. You'll get there." And slowly I did. My first small victory came when a campaign I designed for a local boutique doubled their online sales in a week. I remember printing out the results and staring at the numbers, my heart racing like I'd discovered buried treasure. For the first time since the hospital, I felt capable again. From there, the wins multiplied. A new client here, a successful pitch there. My paycheck began to stretch further. I bought my first decent sofa, then a laptop that wasn't secondhand. Each little step was a brick in the foundation of the life I was quietly building. I didn't post about promotions or accomplishments on social media. My family believed I was barely scraping by, and I let them think so.
It was easier that way.
My success was mine, private and hard-won, and I wasn't ready to share it, not with people who had once chosen to break me. And so, behind closed doors, I grew. Piece by piece, mistake by mistake, victory by victory, I became someone entirely new. The invitation came on a Thursday afternoon, tucked between work emails and client proposals. My mother's handwriting, neat and looping across the envelope, caught my breath. Inside was a cream-colored card announcing Claire's engagement party. For a long moment, I just stared at it.
Claire.
My sister. The same sister whose perfume I could still smell when memory dragged me back to that hospital hallway. The same sister who kissed my husband while I lay unconscious. And now, she was preparing to celebrate a future built on her choices, shamelessly, as if nothing had ever happened. My first instinct was to tear the invitation in half. But then I thought about the years I had spent building myself up from nothing, about Linda's faith in me, about the late nights and small victories that had accumulated into something bigger than I ever dared to imagine. I wasn't the fragile woman in the hospital bed anymore. I was someone who had earned her own name, her own life. And maybe, just maybe, it was time they saw that. The night of the party, I arrived at the hotel ballroom in a navy dress that hugged my curves like quiet armor. My heels clicked against marble as I walked in, shoulders back, head high. Crystal chandeliers dripped light across the room, and the scent of roses and champagne filled the air. Conversations buzzed, laughter rippled. And then silence. Claire spotted me first. Her smile faltered, just for a second, before she plastered on a mask of sweetness. "Emily, you came," she said, her voice pitched too high, like brittle glass. Jason, now her fiancé, apparently, turned, and the color drained from his face. I didn't rush to greet them. Instead, I let the room take me in. The woman I had become. My hair sleek, my makeup subtle but flawless, a quiet confidence in every step. I knew what they expected. The broken sister, still bitter, still clinging to scraps of pain. But what they saw instead was a woman who had rebuilt herself from ashes. When introductions circled and people asked what I did, I didn't shy away. "I run my own marketing firm downtown," I said, casually sipping champagne. "We handle campaigns for several national brands." The words hung in the air, heavy as a gavel. Murmurs swept the room. Someone asked about my office, and I described it. The glass walls overlooking the skyline, the modern art I'd chosen myself, the the quiet corner where I kept Linda's first note of encouragement framed. Jason's jaw tightened. Claire's smile wavered. My mother blinked, as if she were seeing me for the first time. Wait, Claire said finally, her tone sharp with disbelief. You own a firm? Since when? I let the pause stretch, savoring the suspense. Since I decided I was worth more than betrayal, I said softly, but the words carried. Gasps, whispers, shifting feet. The ballroom felt smaller now, all eyes on me. I didn't flinch. I didn't shrink. I simply stood there, letting the truth settle into the bones of every person who had once doubted me, or worse, abandoned me. Jason cleared his throat. Emily, we didn't know. I met his gaze evenly. Of course you didn't. You never cared enough to ask. The silence that followed was the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. For once, I wasn't the girl in the paper gown, watching her world collapse. I was the woman who had built her own. And now, they had no choice but to see it. The weight of the room shifted after my words. It wasn't just silence anymore, it was reckoning. I could see it in their eyes, the dawning realization that the version of me they'd carried in their heads no longer existed. Claire tried first, her laugh brittle. Emily, come on. Don't be dramatic. We were young, we made mistakes. You can't keep holding on to. I cut her off with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Mistakes are forgetting a birthday or losing a library book. What you and Jason did, that was a choice. Jason bristled, his fingers curling around his glass. We didn't mean to hurt you. I tilted my head, calm, almost amused. But you did.
And you didn't stop yourselves.
You let me walk out of that hospital, stitches still fresh, and you never came after me. That told me everything. My voice wasn't raised, but it carried the kind of weight no one could ignore. Around us, conversations had stalled. The music felt dimmer. People were listening and I let them. For once, the truth was mine to tell. Then I leaned closer, my tone softening just enough. You want something from me. Otherwise, you wouldn't have sent that invitation. Claire's throat bobbed as she swallowed. We hoped you'd be part of the family again. That maybe you'd bless this union? I asked dryly. Her silence was answer enough. I set my glass down, my hand steady. If you want me in your lives, if you want any form of reconciliation, it won't be on old terms. I don't owe you forgiveness just because we share blood. I don't owe you comfort because you're embarrassed now. My mother's eyes brimmed, but she didn't speak. Jason looked down, his facade cracking. Claire's lips trembled, anger and shame warring in her expression. I took a breath, then laid it out clearly. If you want me around, you'll face what you did. No more pretending it was a slip or an accident. You'll admit it, own it, and stop painting yourselves as victims. And if you want me to respect you again, you'll have to respect yourselves first. Stop hiding behind easy choices. Stop leaning on betrayal as a shortcut to happiness. Otherwise, I'll walk out of here tonight and never look back. The words weren't cruel. They were measured, firm, and laced with the compassion of someone who had already done the hard work of healing. Claire blinked hard, tears threatening. Jason's shoulders sagged. For the first time, I wasn't the one on the defensive. I was the one setting terms. And it felt nothing short of liberating. The silence that followed was heavy, but not unbearable. For once, I wasn't crushed beneath it. I stood tall inside it, unshaken. Claire was the first to break. Her shoulders slumped, and the defiance in her eyes dimmed. You're right, she whispered. The words were fragile, but they were real. I did betray you. I thought Jason was what I wanted, and I didn't care who I hurt to get it. I've lived with that every day. Jason shifted uncomfortably, but even he couldn't meet my gaze. I ruined the best thing that ever happened to me, he admitted, voice low. You deserved better than me, Emily. You always did. For a moment, the ache of those years pressed against my chest, but I didn't let it consume me. This wasn't about reopening old wounds, it was about closing them. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. I should have protected you, she murmured. I failed you too. I inhaled slowly, feeling the truth settle.
They weren't excuses this time.
They weren't trying to rewrite the past. They were facing it, raw and unvarnished. And maybe that was enough. I don't hate you, I said finally, my voice steady. But I won't pretend it didn't shape me. That day in the hospital, it broke me, yes. But it also forced me to become someone stronger than I ever imagined. You don't get credit for that growth. I do. Their eyes glistened, guilt swimming in them, but I wasn't here for their pity. I was here for closure. As I turned to leave, my hand brushed against the small silver bracelet at my wrist, a gift from Linda when I launched my firm. For the woman who chose herself, the engraving read. It was my reminder that even in the wreckage, I had built something beautiful. At the door, I looked back once, offering them a final truth. I don't need you to stay in my life to prove my worth anymore. I already know it. But if you want to stay in mine, you'll have to earn your place. And with that, I walked into the cool night air, the city lights flickering like applause. The past no longer had chains on me. For the first time in years, I wasn't running from the memory of that hospital hallway. I was walking toward my own future, free, whole, and undeniably mine.